Welcome to the Art Talks Dialogues Beyond the Cusp. My name is Antonio Roma Torres, and this podcast is sponsored by Coltin. And today I have a special guest, Asma Al-Taie. Hi, Asma. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Now we are seeing a little bit of sun. Here in Portugal, we have a little bit more sun than in England.
It's a
Um,
lot more than England. We actually are in deep winter still.
Yeah. It's not that normal to have this kind of sun, but we should always enjoy it. Not very good for the production in lighting, but
True.
it's great to have natural light, and we have to embrace it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you are very interesting guest to have here because this is our fifth episode, and you are the first non-exclusive endodontist here. We talk a little bit. I know that you are a super dentist and super researcher.
Very
So we'll
humble.
try. We will try to cover all these things. So Asma, tell me a little bit about your background. Where were you born? Um, Tell me a little bit where do you come from?
Okay. So I was born far away from here, far away from Leeds in the UK. So I was born in Iraq, in northern Iraq. And we moved to Jordan after a few years. I was still a very, very little girl who moved to Jordan with my parents. Both parents are academics, so they were working there. And I grew up there. So it's kind of my second home as well. And this is where I actually studied my bachelor degree in dentistry.
And
And
tell me just sorry to interrupt. Did your parents are related to dentistry? How was the idea? It was a dream that you had as a kid. Tell me a little bit.
yeah, so not at all. My both parents are physicists, which is the only subject that I really did not enjoy in school. I was doing it and I had to do it well because both my parents are physicists. But actually, I was the first dentist in the family, and still the first dentist in the family. I'm trying to convince my nephews to become dentists, but they're not keen. And the reason why dentistry, throughout really quite an early age, I was very good with my hands. So I have very good dexterity. I really enjoy art. So I was very good at painting, carving, uh, kind of knitting, all these kind of like little intricate steps that sort of you would suddenly realize that I'm really good with my hands. But also, I have that sort of character that I really like to help people, and I really like to interact. I have like a certain sort of people come to me where they have problems, and I don't know why. So I feel like I could contribute really to helping people, but also use my let's say you can say USP, that sort of artistic skills, that delicacy that I have with my dexterity. And that's why I felt that actually probably dentistry is the right way forward, because it combines both.
And since the beginning, you had the idea to also do research, like as a side job,
Mm,
or your idea was just to use your hands and helping patients and being like the
yeah,
pure clinician.
absolutely. My first idea is to be pure clinician. I have no interest in research, though both my parents are in academia. My dad is a professor. He's always talking about research, always talking about papers, always talking about these kind of things. But I genuinely had no interest. Throughout my
Okay.
training as an undergraduate student, all I cared about, yes, I want to do this work and I want to have my own little clinic where I see patients, just do 9 to 5, if that, and that's it. So research came into my life a lot later, after finishing my undergraduate degree. And when you finish, you feel like you can, conquer the world. You can help. You can be this famous dentist in the neighborhood. But I realized that actually we really don't know a lot, and I need to upskill to be the best. And this is when sort of I was not focused on the research side. I was thinking about a master's degree to improve my clinical knowledge, etc., in the field of restorative dentistry in general. But as part of that, this is when I met research, and then we became best friends. And then we continued after that.
Okay. I know that you are also a teacher at the university, and I would like to know your opinion between what you felt as a student and what you see now,
Mm,
the young generation. What
mm,
what what do
mm.
you think are the similarities and the differences? Because now the times are changing, and maybe I would suspect that the students and the recent grads uh, don't feel they will conquer the world.
Yes,
I think it's a
absolutely.
feeling that is not happening. But I would love to have your opinion because you are in the field and you see in with your own eyes.
Yes, absolutely. So I deal with undergraduate students, I deal with also postgraduate students. And let's say the similarity, if I look at the similarity, is that it's sort of that always, in a way, looking for, okay, I need to achieve this target. I need to pass this year. I need to pass this module. Is looking at that short term vision, which is still there. It's the same. They focus on the target. The difference is that what I see, and it's not really a criticism. I think it's something that, as you said, how the society changed and how they're treated in school and how we move into university and they carry that forward, is unfortunately sort of we're lacking that independence, and we're lacking that sort of creativity, that initiative. And I feel like it's coming from, probably they don't feel like they have the confidence to have that initiative or that
Yeah,
independence to come up with the creative ideas. They are literally focused on, okay, what is it needed from me to achieve? And I will go do it and achieve it, and that's it. Rather than think beyond the box, get out of your comfort zone. I know it's a cliche to say that, but genuinely, honestly, the best thing that has happened to me in my career is when even my personal life, and we can go to that if you want to, is when we,
yeah,
we
yeah.
when we get outside our comfort zone, and this is when you really achieve your highest potential and you become unique and you feel like, oh yeah, I can, be the best in my field. So it's that I'm really struggling with our current students, is that trying to get them out of their comfort zone and for them to seek that. Unfortunately, we don't have it, and this, what happens when they leave dental school? They feel quite lost. They don't feel
Yeah.
like they have a target. They don't feel like, okay, what's next? Because they didn't get used to that during school, primary school, secondary school, and they were not used to it during university. I feel like that's a difference to our kind of generation when we studied.
don't you, don't you think that they are more aware of their limitations? Because now with the internet, with videos, with YouTube, with social media, you can
Mm,
see amazing people doing everything in
mm,
dentistry, but even in sports you can see
yeah,
the best in the world.
true.
And maybe the feeling is like, I'm not able to be as good as this guy I'm seeing in this video. It's not worth trying because there are so many amazing people doing this, and it could be a sport or an art or dentistry.
Yeah,
Like, this endodontist is amazing with these techniques. I'm not able. It's not worth trying because
100%.
I'm so far away. And
Yeah.
maybe in previous times when I was a student, the internet was very limited, so I didn't know. It
Yes.
was like a mystery. I didn't know what people could do in
Yeah.
terms of skills, and maybe ignorance is a blessing because I
True.
try to be better.
Yeah.
I remember I talked in the last episode with Antonis Caniotis with the Roots mailing list. I don't know if
Mm.
you
Yeah, I saw a
are
bit of that.
aware.
Yeah. Mm.
And this mailing list was great, but it was very limited because I didn't see like videos. It was just some pictures because the internet was not
Yeah.
as complete as nowadays. And maybe now we have too much information, and maybe young people are a little bit paralyzed
Mm.
because there's so many
Mm.
inputs of
Mm.
information. uh,
Absolutely. I completely agree. Like, I did not grow up with social media. I did not have any social media or internet during my studies, very limited. I can't even remember using Google to do things, or watching YouTube, or let alone Instagram and all of that. I completely agree. It's a double-edged sword, unfortunately. From one end, it's good because, as you said, they have access to the information a lot quicker than we did, and that they could explore their potentials a lot quicker. But unfortunately, it's overwhelming. You very very correctly said it's too much information, so you don't know where you fit within that, and you would want to achieve those higher standards. But is it realistic? Is it possible? I always see a lot of, let's say, I call it like fake news in dentistry. Like people put cases, and it's like the reality is not, it's not the same. Really, this is not like a simple way to get to that stage. There's things that are not told in that story.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's these fake headlines, fake things, and then unfortunately, some people may be bought into it and they go and they try it and they fail and then they shy away and then some change career. And I've seen lots of our graduates moving actually away from dentistry because of these early failures. As you said, we were a bit maybe oblivious and we just went and did certain things, didn't work, but we learned from it rather than we felt that, okay, I did not achieve that highest target, so I'm not good in that. So it's a double-edged sword, and we kind of almost need to take a step back and incorporate that within our education early on,
yeah.
and so that they don't give it up too quickly, but also at the same time don't get pulled into it, and then it's you face with a harsh reality.
Yeah, I think we in education we are still trying to uh, uh, ask about information that we make download in our brain, and we are not trained to think, and we are not trained to make a plan and to execute and to see mistakes and to learn and to grow from it. We are just learning as before the internet. It was important before these smartphones and this technology. It was important for a doctor, for instance,
Yeah,
to know a lot of things,
yeah,
to do diagnostic,
yeah.
to know this and that. But nowadays, I think my brain is like an index,
Yes.
because I cannot know the information. I just need to know where is it, the information.
Fine.
A little bit
Yeah,
like geography,
yeah,
that now with Google Maps and everything, I don't know the paths.
yeah.
I just need to know a little bit. I don't know the roads
Whole story.
by heart,
Yeah.
and it's not that important.
I completely
And
agree. And like the other thing that's facing us is the kind of introduction of AI, and like that's even another beast that I really can't comprehend what would be the consequences. Because even if, let's say, you know where to find the information, nowadays it's written for you. If you like, you don't even have to look, you can just ask ChatGPT or whatever to say,
yeah, yeah,
tell me about bonding agents for composites. And then that's so risky because you don't know where that source is coming from. So even that research skills, because there's a previous cohort where at least they go and research and maybe compare. You'd hope that they would compare the resources, whereas nowadays we would be running the risk that we might be having just one easy, quick resource, and that could be good, but it could be also very bad. Um,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
What is your opinion? This is not in the script, but
Yeah,
these conversations, we flow with our conversation. As a researcher, do you see nowadays we see a lot, and ChatGPT or the other AI engines, so to say,
mhm,
are very useful
mhm.
to to organize information, and they can help you a lot. And
Yes,
we see that more and more scientific papers are written with ChatGPT.
yeah,
What is
yeah.
your opinion? Do you think it's like doping in sports? Uh,
It's to be honest, like I am not against change, but it's embracing change and utilizing it in the right way. So technology is inevitable, that it's part of our
yeah,
daily life and we're moving towards it. So I'm not going to be a dinosaur and say that actually no, everyone has to go to the library, find that dusty book or whatever, and then have a look and write it. I think it's how it's embraced, and how it's utilized. I think there is pros and cons for it. 100%. Same thing like it's internet and Google and having all these resources, but if it's done in a very calculated, very measured way, and people are educated effectively on that. So I receive a lot of, let's say, training sessions on using these AI kind of softwares to effectively utilize it, and it's coming from professional units, from professional, not necessarily in dentistry, that you can actually use it in your benefit without compromising on the originality, without compromising on the creativity that needs to come from a human. But maybe me and you, we can think about that because we've done it completely the other direction, going to the library, finding the resources and writing things, and then have this extreme, we find that happy medium. But I completely do worry about, let's say, our younger dentists or younger scientists that actually they just find it the easy way out. And this is again our part to come into sort of education, but also there has to be an overall power that can control that as well, in a positive way. But it is risky, and we are facing that in education actually as a big question. If you look at academic integrity, we have a process for academic integrity, and we assess the manuscripts, we assess projects, how they're written, but that's not equipped for AI generated reports. So we have to be quick in adapting or embracing that, understanding it, and then coming up with solutions. But it's a whole beast.
Yeah, more than ever, we should train our critical thinking, because it's impossible
Yeah.
to go another way. It's
Yeah.
just like with and you talk a little bit about that with the internet. Okay, you can put it on Google.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the first result is true. So
Exactly.
you know how to filter a little bit and to
Yes.
think like, okay, this
Yeah.
this website, maybe it's not reliable information. Okay, let me
Yes.
scroll a little bit.
Yes.
And it's the only way
Yeah.
to our salvation,
Absolutely.
is to
Yeah.
and we are not trained to do that, because we've been in the last, I don't know, 200 years training the obedience and
Yeah.
not having making questions,
Yes.
and to do replicas of things, and to memorize and to copy.
Yes.
And the skills that we trained were not creative.
Absolutely. And that goes into from really being in kindergarten to being in primary school to being in school. And it's sort of because we've just become this sort of institutions that, as you said, just teach you a skill and get you out rather than be creative. If you look at universities, like, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, university was for you to explore your potential and explore what you're good at, where you're bad at, rather than it's a massive apprenticeship program that you're just going to learn a skill and leave. And we've kind of shifted away from that creativity, from that sort of critical thinking, from that initiative, and we really need to bring it back. And one could say, well, why is that relevant to dentistry? Dentistry is such a technical skill. Well, I would say, like, actually, our patient cohort is becoming more and more complex. It's not straightforward. And we have so many options for treatment, so many options for solutions. So without having that skill, this is when it becomes disheartening and you feel like, I'm not good at this job. It's not because you can't hold a drill or use a root canal file system. It's because of sort of applying that knowledge, critically appraise it and critique it, and then utilize it for that one patient. And this is the skill that I really hope that we can bring our colleagues, younger colleagues, to get back into.
Yeah, another skill that we should improve, and for me as a student, I didn't get a lot, is on soft skills, and how to approach people, and how to talk and respect our patients. And
Yes,
I think
yes,
we at least for the, or maybe you can say that the teacher told me, but I was not mature enough and I didn't listen, and I was just trying to see the technical
yes,
stuff, like, did I remove all the decay? And
yes,
maybe the
and
teacher
not,
told me, Antonio, look the way you talk with the patient. And in my mind was like, did
yes,
I remove all the decay?
it's the
Maybe I
same.
was not I was
Yes,
not mature enough, and the information was there, but I sense that in the first, I would say, 5 years of my career, uh, I was just focused on technical stuff. Like
Yeah.
and I told this on another episode. I thought that my worth as a person was translated in the clinical
Yes. Mm.
operation that I
Mm.
was doing.
Mm.
If I reach the working length, I'm a good person. If I don't reach, I'm a fraud, and I'm a lousy dentist, and I don't care about anything else. Like,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
if I'm a nice person or not, it doesn't. This is not important. What is important is to achieve patency,
Yes.
and I will.
Completely agree. I absolutely completely agree. And like actually, the more obviously when you mature more and you see the patients, and actually the soft skills and your charisma and your communication skills is way more important. Yes, the clinical techniques are important, but it carries a lot of weight into actually the outcome that for that patient and in terms of their experience. Sometimes it's just having those soft skills to be open and honest as well, because this is what I see with some of our younger colleagues is when a problem happens, they don't know how to communicate that, and then it makes it worse for them because the patients don't perceive that they can have the confidence in this person in being honest and open, and because problems do happen, as you said, we might be 1 millimeter short of the apex, but looking at the bigger picture, like, look, is the patient out of pain? Is that sealed? Have I communicated that? Have I documented that? Have I followed that? Is all incorporating that as part of our sort of day-to-day job is so important. And that falls back to, as you said, when we are in university, all we care about, did I do the number of crowns that I'm meant to be doing? Did I do the number of root canals? Did I pass that module? And I remember when I was at university, we had modules that are, we have to have had them, but they're optional modules that are not part of the dental curriculum. So you go and study or go a module on social sciences or politics or marketing
Okay.
or even some random things like astronomy. It's just one module that you do in the year. And it's looking at the time for me, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Why do I need to know about marketing? Why do I need to know about finance? But then obviously that is a huge part of our day-to-day job as a dentist, or even communication skills, or even IT skills. Like some, though our younger generation or so lots of our colleagues are IT savvy, but generally when we ask certain people to, let's say, create an Excel sheet of your treatment plan or whatever, they struggle. So it's just incorporating that as part of your evolution. If you don't have it in your dental education afterwards, look for that and like learn these things and and this is where I say get out of your comfort zone, and this will become your USP. This will become your unique thing that will give you the confidence
Yeah.
in your day-to-day job.
So let's go back to your biography, saying you said before to stay away from your comfort zone, and you moved 3 times at least
Yes.
from very different countries. So you did that in your own life.
Yes.
Maybe could I say that this helped you to find other challenges, like after changing 3 times of country,
Yeah.
maybe doing a super post graduation program? Maybe it's not that intimidating because it's very difficult to move from another country.
Yes.
Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about your
Definitely.
experience.
At the time when you move places, whether you move countries or you move work units or universities, at the time you feel like this is just the worst thing ever. You have to go and find new friends, find your new way, find it. But then ultimately, what that does to you is building your resilience. It improves your ability to problem solve. It improves your confidence because you feel like that if you, especially if you do it and you stay and you commit to it, it is a massive confidence boost because we feel like I can face any change, I can face any challenge. And you might say, okay, well, this is a big change, but actually in our day-to-day practice, change happen all the time. So suddenly you might end up with that all your nurses have to change, or you don't have a nurse or whatever. Then for some be like, oh, it's a disaster. For me, I'm like, okay, fine, keep calm. How can we approach it? How do we problem solve? So it just builds that resilience, and resilience is a big word, and you can't just learn it. It's the more you experience, the more you put yourself outside that zone, the better, the higher resilience you will gain. But also it's your networking. Like, I feel very proud that I know people, and I know dentists or non-dentists from so many countries. Like now today I'm talking to you and you're in Portugal. Like just before we met, we spoke, I had a call with Japan, and it's just fascinating and it's amazing. But I could only do that if I have left my comfort zone. Doesn't mean that you have to move countries 3 times like I did, but when you study somewhere, maybe go and for your postgraduate somewhere else, or maybe have a work somewhere else, learn from it, and maybe you would want to come back. That's absolutely fine. But actually, traveling and moving places is so good for yourself as a person, but actually for your networking and for your skills and, as you said, soft skills, it's gold, because that's actually what brings you to that level. And you can't just learn it. You have to experience it. It feels awful at the time, but very quickly realize that actually this was the best things that you've done in your life.
When you ended your graduation in Jordan, did you work there, or did
Yes.
you? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you would live in Jordan, and that was it,
Initially.
or
Initially.
initially? Okay.
Yeah. Initially, that was the plan. But then, like, worked in the hospital, worked in a practice setting, like a private practice setting. And then I just felt that I'm just repeating what I was doing in my undergraduate. Same type of patients, same type of techniques. Actually, when I did the hospital, which we would call like we call it foundation program, that you have to do after you qualify, I did it in the same hospital where I trained. It was good. It was easy. I can drive the same way. I have the same friends, but I didn't learn much. It
You
was
were inside your comfort zone, right in the
completely
middle
right in
of
the
your comfort
middle.
zone. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And then I just realized that, yes, it's good, it's easy, comfortable life, but I will stay where I am. Like, I will not progress in my career. I might do, but it'd be really slow progress. And if I don't move either to a different city or a different country, a different unit, I'm not going to gain extra skills. And this is when I decided to do my master's at Leeds. But
And
this
did you move alone, or did you go with your parents
No,
to?
so I did move alone. My parents were
Okay.
still in Jordan. But I had family in Leeds, so my sister was here in Leeds, who moved before me to do her PhD, and she completely moved alone. So there was no one here. So, like,
Okay.
huge
Okay.
hats off for her. But she still echoes what I say, that that was the best thing that she did for as a person and from a career perspective as well.
Okay, and when you went directly to your specialist training program at Leeds
No,
Dental
yeah,
Hospital? No.
yeah. So I went to dental hospital, but to do my master's degree.
Okay.
And that was a master's degree in restorative. And as part of that, because I was interested already in composites and toothware already at the time, I did my research project on toothware and wear of composites, because composites at the time were becoming a bit more popular, not just as an aesthetic restoration, but also for rehabilitation. So this is when that was a complete out of comfort zone position, because I was in a lab with scientists. All my friends at the time, or I was surrounded by, there were material scientists, biomaterials, biomedical engineering, completely different to the dental school, clinicians. But then this is when actually the soft skills completely peaked, because I can't talk their language, they can't talk my language from a professional perspective. And this is when you try to find that common ground, but then soon realize that actually working closely with the material scientists, an actual scientist, not a clinician. You can be a clinician and scientist, but just purely that opens your mind to so many things that you didn't think that it's possible, because we always work in isolation. trying to fix the same problem, but we don't talk to each other. But when we talk to each other, this is when you actually make a huge impact. And this is when that bulb lit up, and I said, right, that's something I have to incorporate in my career. Talk to my scientific colleagues, material scientists, biomedical engineering, and incorporate that into the clinical to solve the clinical problems that we have now. Because they can go and invest years and so much money on trying to make a material, let's say, better, but clinically, is there a gap for that? If there isn't, what's the point?
Yeah.
So this is where I came in.
It's so interesting because as a clinician, I love to talk with the industry scientists and developers, and even people that are doing just research,
Yeah.
just as solo researchers,
Yes.
pure researchers. And it's very funny because it's two there are two versions of the same story, because
Yeah.
what I see like a soldier, what I see in the battlefield, sometimes it's not the same that the guy that is doing the bullets
Yeah.
thinks.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are convinced that one characteristic is very useful,
Mhm.
and you don't understand that performance, you don't see it
Yeah.
clinically.
Yeah.
But sometimes we also are very ignorant when we are looking at clinic, uh, because I just can't. I see things from memory. It's not even a
Mm.
study. It's like
Yes.
my impression, my feeling,
Of course.
and maybe I'm talking about the last 5 times I used the material,
Yes. Yes.
because
Yeah.
it's not the absolute truth. There
Ex-
are a lot of clinicians that say like, no, I know because I see it, and we must be aware that we cannot see the whole information. But
Absolutely.
sometimes scientists also say, no, no, this is great because this is like, and
Yeah.
we don't see, and
We don't
that's
see. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
How can you do as a researcher and clinician? How do you have each side of the brain
Yeah.
working, or how do you
So
integrate in your inner being?
yeah, it's a constant battle because I have my clinical side and see, let's say, okay, the problems, etc. But also there is a pragmatic side. That, for example, from a scientist's perspective, you'd say, okay, for example, bonding agents. Let's say the gold standard is you do the three-step bonding agents, etch, prime, bond, etc. Take your time, all these kind of things. Completely agree. It works, all of that. But my clinician hat comes in and say, yes, but I have a patient who's impatient, moving, don't have time. We have to improve that material to be able to allow us to do it effectively and efficiently. And so I can't ignore that. Or I might come and say, practically, that's not possible because, let's say, looking at, let's say, intraoral scanners or whatever, the early evolution of it is practically, if I have a limited mouth opening, I can't do that. So it's sort of always bringing that. But the only way it works if you are active in both sides. If you're just active by, even as a clinician, as a dentist, if you're only active in research, you lose that. You lose that reality. And if you're just active clinician and you might have done your master's, I don't know, 20 years ago, you lose that. So you have to maintain activity in both. But then this will end up being that you have to choose a field. So you can't be good at everything. I can't be an expert on everything. So you have to choose your field and your niche. And then be
Yeah.
the best in that.
But you almost tried, right? Because
I
after
tried,
your
but
master
I am
degree,
I'm very humble to say that I am definitely not the best at everything. There's certain things that I am really good at. I can give you some insight onto, like, but like I do know my limitation, and again, that's something that's quite important to learn, that actually we all have our limitations, and I am more than happy to go to my other colleague, maybe down south or in a different country, which is their area of expertise, and then seek help from them. Like, I'm not afraid of that, and I completely acknowledge it.
yeah, but you did your 5 year specialty training program in restorative dentistry,
Yeah.
and you were told me that your program was very complete. It was not like when I hear restorative dentistry, I think about composites,
Yes.
maybe some adhesive dentistry, and that's it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you did
exactly.
also perio and
And
endodontics, so it's almost dentistry
yes,
and not
exactly.
restorative
Yeah.
dentistry.
So it's
Tell us a little
normally
bit more
more
about that.
about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So normally if you were to do, let's say, just prosthodontics or endodontics or periodontics, you would do training program for around 3 years. Or 2 to 3 years, kind of. It depends on where you are. This is full time. Restorative dentistry is a 5 year full time clinical training program, but it's very clinical heavy. So my usual week would have been I would have had 7 sessions that's clinical. And then I have 2 to 3 sessions where I can do my admin and some of my academic responsibilities. So it's very clinical heavy and is led by specialists and consultants. So they can be monospecialists in endo, perio, and pros, or it can be consultants in restorative. And it's very much didactic as well. So you get a lot of sort of that. It's a lot of information overload within that period of time. And it goes through the stages. So initially you start general things, and then in each year you focus on a certain element. So you focus on your endo, you focus on your perio, you focus on your implants as the complexity grow. But because it's a very clinical heavy program, you do see a lot of patients and you do see all sorts of complex cases in those disciplines, but it's up to you really to maximize that. So if you have an interest in endo, then you would shift towards more, actually, I would want to see majority of endo or perio or pros. But ultimately, you will end up having the competencies and the knowledge and the skills to a specialist in all these three disciplines. You can't maintain it forever. Ultimately, you end up choosing one of them. But when you just finish fresh off that training program, you should be able to do it all, really. But ultimately, we know that the best way to stay up to date and the best that way you do is to keep doing it. And this is when you ultimately end up having to choose one. Doesn't mean that you forget your skills in the other disciplines. You still do them and you just pick and choose. So for example, like I still do a lot of the obviously prosthodontics and toothwear because that's my main thing. I still do the endo, but I'm not very keen on the perio. Like I would send the perio recession defects to my perio focused colleagues. I'm happy to do my crown lengthening because it's relevant to my topic, but I wouldn't feel comfortable using a recession defect, for example. So it's
Yeah.
really the same. Others might say, I'm not comfortable in doing apical surgery or because my main focus is XYZ. So that's how it works.
I think our training, I did a 3 year post graduation in endodontics, and I think I never worked in a hospital environment, and I see a lot of colleagues here in Portugal is not very. There are not a lot of dentists that worked in hospitals, and I think it's. I would love to have been working in a hospital because I think that you see patients and you see more diseases.
Yes,
When we are practicing just in private practice, you see a lot of healthy people that are fixing one tooth, and when you are in the hospital environment, you can see the big picture
yeah,
of what is a
yeah,
disease, what is being healthy,
yeah,
and what is important. And maybe you did some treatments in compromised patients, and even compromised treatments that are not ideal, but
absolutely.
they are the best treatment that we can do for our patients in the present moment. And I think this background can be useful to build, like we said, resilience.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes when we are working in the clinic, also we get frustrated because we cannot do
Mm,
what we intended.
mm.
And maybe if everyone worked like 1 or 2 years in the hospital, they could see the bigger picture and understand that the treatment that is 80% is 100%.
Yes,
uh,
absolutely, absolutely. And this is one of the things that I really encourage my students to do is yes, they can go graduate, do their foundation training, the mandatory training that they need to do. but try to work in a hospital environment as well, because this is when you would really gain these extra skills that you might not be your day-to-day patient, but it's the resilience skills, the troubleshooting, the problem solving skills, plus some of the technical skills. If you're really interested, let's say, in oral surgery and difficult extractions and etc., you would learn that. So it's definitely again, getting out of your comfort zone. Don't stay in that middle circle.
Yeah, and nowadays in the present moment you work at the university,
Yes.
also in the hospital, in
Hmm.
private practice, and you do research.
Yes, exactly.
So how do you manage? How can you live
Yeah.
with so many
So many hats.
different things? How is the distribution in your life to not be crazy?
Yes.
How can you manage to have sanity and being competent in these different areas that are not the same, like the same sport?
Yes.
It's like different areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the
Tell
main
us.
thing is to be like super. So primarily, I'm in the hospital and the university, and in private practice, I'm there around a day a week.
Okay.
But the rest, my clinics is in the hospital, and I have my postgraduate students in the hospital. Now, the main thing is to honestly be super organized, and you have to be quite strict of what you say yes to, because it's very easy to say yes and yes and yes, but then suddenly you're drowning, or suddenly everyone is pushing you from the different directions, and you stay in the same middle position, like you can't go anywhere. So being organized, being focused. So choose a field that you're interested in, but say no. I'm saying no more often than I used to, and again, that's a skill. It doesn't mean that you're shutting the door all the time, but to kind of know what you can achieve within the time frame that you have. But also, it's actually having. It doesn't sound like I have a good work-life balance, but actually having that in mind. So think about beyond dentistry. So it's think about, okay, what else do I do in my weekend, or every few months or so, plan something beyond your day-to-day job for you to recharge. Because if you don't do that, you would quickly burn out. um,
Yeah.
to be honest, I like the diversity of my job. I feel like it keeps me on my toes, it keeps my brain ticking, it keeps me current, but it might not be for everybody. But I do think that it's useful to just do something else than your day to day, every day in private practice. You just do something slightly different, and this is when you would actually enjoy your career a lot more. And it doesn't have to be like the way I do it, but this is what I ended up doing, and I enjoy it, and it works for me. Um, but like, it's just something, and bear in mind that you have to be organized. I always say to my students, I have a to-do list every day I come to my office. Every day, I really old-fashioned. I have a pen and paper, write my to-do list, and prioritize in that. I might not achieve it, but at least it just makes my brain structured, and I
Yeah.
know where I am. Um, so that's how I.
I'm laughing because it's very interesting. You are the second woman in this podcast series, and the first one, Oana, also talked about having an agenda,
Yeah,
and maybe women are more organized
yeah,
because none of the men talk about having a good agenda
yeah.
and a good planning.
Mm,
But both of you said that it's very important
yeah,
organization in terms of agenda.
yeah.
I'm trying to have an agenda and to have everything since the episode with Oana. Let's see. I did not. I'm not able to do that for now, but let's see in the future. I will try to do
Yeah.
that. I
It just
promise.
sometimes it puts things into perspective, and then I'm able to reflect and say, okay, I can take on another PhD student, or I can give this lecture here and there. But sometimes it tells me that actually I am overstretched and it's not possible, and it would be unfair on the other projects that I'm doing to take that time for that. So for me, that it works for me. Some I have it on my sticky notes. Some people have it on their phone. Some people have it as a digital format, whichever works for you, but it generally does help. and I find it work. It frustrates me when others don't do it because I'm like, but where's your to-do list? And this is when things could slip sometimes from your net as well, and you tend to forget or miss out on opportunities.
Yeah.
Like we get so many
Yeah.
opportunities, and if we've not written it down, then you might miss out.
Yeah, and sometimes stress because you forgot something and you have to
Mm,
speed up
yeah.
to compensate. And tell me a little bit about your daily routines or your habits. Are you a morning person? You wake up and start sending those abstracts in the email right away. You try to not touch on the computer in the first hours when you wake up. What is more or less a normal day for you?
Yeah.
How do you
Mm.
organize everything?
So I'm normally a morning person. Generally, I would have clinics for 3, 4 days a week in the morning. So I don't have much time if I don't wake up early. So normally, what I do, I like to wake up, have a nice cup of coffee just to kind of get awake. But then I like to get to my office and early before my clinics so that I can look at my emails, look at my patient list, all these kind of things, and then start my clinical day. So I do, let's say, maybe kind of compromise in my early hours time, and I could sleep a little bit more and all that kind of thing. But I really would hate it to that, okay, I'm just got to the office, got my scrubs on, and straight onto clinic. I just couldn't do that. I need to sit down for at least an hour before clinics and having a look at my to-do list, having a look at my emails with a nice cup of coffee. And that I feel like really helped me a lot. Do I work late? I try to avoid working late. I used to do more before, especially when I was doing my specialist training. Often I'm leaving at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening sometimes. I feel really sorry for my poor husband. I try to avoid that now, unless there is a target, there is a deadline, there is a student that needs help, whatever. Then I would do it, but I try to avoid it. And I try not to take work nowadays, work to home, to home. So I would rather stay
Okay.
later at work, finish my letters, finish my treatment plans, then take it home and do it from home. I try to really switch off. And when I go home, we try to always go out, go for a walk, just to fresh up your mind. Try. It's very difficult to motivate yourself, especially when it's
Yeah, yeah.
cold and rainy and windy. But we try to do that, or maybe go to the gym if possible. And my hobby is cooking. So me and my husband, we end up cooking together. And this is when we catch up on what's happened in the day. It's healthy behavior. You cook every day, all of that fresh. It's so hard to motivate yourself, but it's fulfilling when you do it. You feel like, okay, I've had a really hard day, but I came back, I switched off, I was in the kitchen cooking together, chatting about the day and eating something healthy. So my advice would be just find something that's really not work related. It's hard work. You need to invest the time and the energy into it. But again, it's putting yourself outside what's easy, what's comfortable, and then you will get the reward afterward mentally and physically.
Yeah, our first guest does ultra marathons,
Oh, wow.
and I will never forget. He told me on the podcast, you can see on the first episode, he told me, like, Antonio, the first 50 kilometers are easy. The second 50 kilometers are very, very hard. And I was like, oh my God, 50 kilometers.
Yeah, that is
Um,
mad.
so yeah, yeah, yeah. As sometimes sport could be a good activity.
Yeah.
Do you have any sport or hobby, or you just go to the gym just
So,
to?
generally, like if I were to, it's still sports, but I do like dancing. So, like ballroom dancing, Latin or modern jive. And that is my view of sport because it's a lot of cardio, a lot of core muscles, etc. And I actually did that a lot during my specialty training because that was only where I can switch off fully. Uh, and it's in the middle of the week. I used to go on a Wednesday and just that's it. So that's my kind of sport, let's say. I'm not a big fan of running or cycling or anything like that. I don't have that as a regular thing. I would do that in the gym, but that's about it. But more mainly focused on sort of being active by incorporating a different hobby within.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very important. I think that everybody is understanding that you cannot live long and have a good life if you eat crappy foods, and nowadays with Uber Eats, with everything,
Yeah.
it's very hard to resist to order some uh, greasy food that is
Yes.
tasty,
Yes.
because the industry knows how to do something
Yeah.
that you would love,
Yes.
and when you are very tired, and it's important to resist. Also, I like to cook, and I think it's important to understand what you are eating.
Mm,
You get a little bit more grounded to
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
to our existence, because I see that a lot of people that don't like to cook don't know what they are eating,
No.
don't understand
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
are the ingredients
Yeah.
of the food they are eating.
Yeah.
And I think it's important
Yeah.
to understand
I
that.
completely agree. And
So
it changes your view of things. Like there is a program I think I watched that's called You Are What You Eat. And
yeah.
it's just interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you have also the blue zones, and you have
Yes,
a lot of things
exactly.
about,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that, and maybe we all should see it as an example and trying to understand. And the Middle East food is one of the best. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
cook a lot of
Yes.
traditional.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. So our diet is generally Mediterranean, lots of olive oil, lots of fresh
yeah,
fruits and veg, and like it's yeah, a very influenced Mediterranean kind of diet. Yeah.
yeah. It's me too, and I think it's the the best.
It's
I
the,
don't know,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
at
We're
least it's
biased,
the
but
one that
yeah.
I see. Yeah. It's the one that I see more. Going a little bit in the in clinical aspects. What do you think? It's the most simple tip you can, and it's I would love you to give me a thing that we can do, a tip that is practical, not
Mm,
like
mm.
do the diagnostic
No.
or see the X-ray.
Yeah.
The one practical tip that is simple, that
Mhm.
everybody can apply in the clinic,
Right.
and that maybe you discovered later than you wanted. Like, I would love to know that
Yeah.
like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, it
There.
could be in
Yeah.
the endodontics or restorative dentistry.
Okay. So it's think of so many, but the only thing that's coming to my head is, let's say, when you're using composites posteriorly, when you're trying to build the cusps, etc. People, we were trained, most of us, to do amalgam, and you carve things. So you put it, big blob, carve it. And most of us try to do that with composite, but then composite sticks and kind of move away from the tooth, etc. So my tip for that, if you are, this is just thing that came to my head. My tip to
Yeah,
that really is, if you are building the cusps for a molar tooth, don't try to put one big increment and then carve it. Build each individual cusp with a little ball of composite. So just imagine how big that cusp. Make a little ball, whether directly from your composite gun, or if it's a big one, just with compure syringe, just a small ball. Put it in and then shape it. If you look at that, little balls and then shape them together is much quicker, more predictable, easier. And my favorite instrument, which not many people probably use, if your composite sticks to your instruments, just use a micro brush, a dry
yeah.
brush, and then just tap your composite with it, and that keeps it in place. Simple, cheap, everybody has it.
Yeah. Great. That was exactly what the kind of tips that I would want you to tell us. And I when I'm doing like big build-ups and I'm struggling with the matrix and everything,
Mhm.
I think it's more difficult to do a very uh, tough class 2
Yeah.
restorative than doing the endodontic treatment. A
Yes.
lot of times it's more difficult to do the build-up
Yes.
than the root
Then
canal
the root
treatment.
canal.
Sometimes I use flow composite,
Mm.
just a thin layer,
Mm.
to build a wall.
Yeah.
What is your opinion about that as a researcher and
Yes.
as a clinician?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
do you
So
think
I'm.
it's valid? Do you think that we are losing a lot of having flow, and you should use the composite right away?
Mm,
Um,
mm. Not at all, especially if you are using flowable composites that's a bulk fill. The only difficulty is if you have just a normal flowable material and you put it at the depth of your box, so quite deep in your access cavity or whatever, I do worry if it's going to be fully cured, etc.
Yeah,
So I would use a flowable, but bulk fill flowable, which would have the advantage of that is going to cure, but also it doesn't shrink. So if I'm using it around the wall, if I'm using it at the base, it's not going to shrink to the same degree. But 100%, I use it all the time in my class twos or molar access cavities after to restore it afterwards. I do use that. I do cap it obviously on top, like the very top
yeah.
layer, but at the base, 100%, there's absolutely no problem with that. In fact, you're more likely to seal the gaps and the voids with that than with using normal composite. The only thing is I would use a bulk fill flowable if it's fairly deep.
Yeah, and are you? I always like to use a Teflon tape. I'm a
Yes,
little bit
yes,
addict
yes,
to Teflon tapes.
absolutely, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I was
even to coat the wedge sometimes to create a little bit of space
absolutely, yeah. So
to
this
help the
is my our
matrix.
other cheap kind of way to really solve these problems, the gaps at the depth of your box. If you have your matrix and it's not really quite nicely fitted, and even you added the wedge, Teflon, pack it between the matrix and the adjacent tooth, and that will give you the right contour, and then to avoid having these voids. Absolutely, I completely agree.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about endodontics because I know that you perform endodontic treatments.
Yeah,
You were recently in the British Endodontic
yeah,
Society,
that's correct.
uh, so you are more specialized in the endodontically treated restorative
Yes,
part.
absolutely. Hmm.
Um, what do you think are the biggest? I would like to know your opinion about what we endodontists are lacking. You see,
Yeah,
you have a more broad vision.
yeah, yeah,
What do you think it's our biggest limitation
yeah.
as endodontists? What do you think we should improve, or what do you
Mm.
see as a mistake or a problem? I don't
Yeah.
want you to
Yeah,
get in
yeah, yeah.
trouble
No,
with the
absolutely not.
endodontic
With my
community,
colleagues, I have
but
so many colleagues in
yeah,
endodontics.
yeah,
Really, actually, being at the British Endo Society when we were in Belfast in autumn, actually, it was quite reassuring that a lot of endodontists are now looking at things that they need to do their restorations, and they're investing the time and the energy to learn about that sort of endodontic restorative interface, because it's not just about providing the best, most beautiful root canal and the most disinfected canal. That dentine is completely desiccated because you've used all these harsh chemicals to kill the bacteria, infiltrate it all. But what we're using afterwards, we're using resin-based materials, which likes a dentine that still has the collagen, still has the tubules open. So I think it's cut like the specialists in the field and very active endodontists are actually incorporating that. And there were like beautiful talks from endodontic specialists talking about that actually and acknowledging that we need to do our restorations afterwards. We need to get better at sealing that interface, not just over the orifice, but above and building up that tooth correctly. Sometimes you do that before even your access because you need to have good border seal or coronal seal before you start, obviously. So I think it's not a criticism, but I think it's highly encouraged that they need to understand their materials, their bonding technique after they endodontically treat that tooth. One of my talks was talking about essentially what happens to the dentine in your access cavity if you have used hypochlorite, you've used EDTA, and then you later on just go and etch it and apply bond, etc., assuming that you're going to have a nice interface. One of the things that hypochlorite does, it's very good at killing bacteria, but it's not very good at maintaining the integrity of your dentine, which is the layer that you want to work with. So actually sort of finishing off with EDTA in the coronal or cleaning your access cavity properly with gooseneck burrs, etc., creating that fresh layer of dentine, and then don't over etch it. So you don't need to etch the dentine if you're using universal adhesives that are already acidic. You can etch your enamel, but do not etch your dentine, and then use your composite restoration on top. So that would be my sort of advice. That would be what I would like to see. Hopefully, most endodontists would be doing.
Yeah.
And I would really, although I would like to do the restorations, but I would want them to seal that tooth, and build the core and etc., rather than moving it forward to their colleague next door.
Yeah, because sometimes we rely on the quality of treatment of our referrals, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not that good. And
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and it's a little bit sad that our result in terms of our
Yeah.
outcome in the treatment,
Yeah.
it doesn't depend only on our skills or our treatment, our job,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
You told me that you also do some research about um, endodontic sealers. Nowadays, we see, I would not call a revolution, but a trend towards the bioceramic sealers,
Mm-hmm.
the silicate based
Mm-hmm.
sealers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any information to share with us,
Yeah.
or what is your opinion as a clinician?
Yeah.
Do you use them?
Mm-hmm.
And what is your opinion as a researcher?
Yes, absolutely. So I was very interested when they first came in, because they came in, obviously I understand bioceramic sealers and we have used them anyway, these kind of materials like with biodentine, MTA-based materials, the same kind of chemistry, but not as a
Yeah,
sealer. So when they came in as a sealer, it makes complete sense. But what was for me a little bit alarming is that it was promoted to be used with a single cone technique. Essentially, again, in the same trend of let's keep it simple, let's make it very quick. So I was quite interested to see, actually, if you are using single cone technique, are you actually effectively sealing your root canal in the key parts, which is the apical part and the coronal part, etc. And this is when I looked at a variety of root canal sealers, which was actually a research award grant from the British Endodontic Society, that they were very supportive to do that work, to look at the sealing ability, looking at the voids percentages around these kind of different types of sealers with a single cone technique. Now, I see where maybe a single cone can be used if there is like a very narrow canal, posterior tooth, etc. But most of the cases that we see are, I see, are anterior teeth, which are very wide canals, and it's not going to be suitable for that. So we did it on premolars, actually, single rooted premolars, which again, they have very oval canals, so not really great for single cone. But
yeah,
most people would do that. I mean, generalists, not specialists, would be tempted to say, okay, the bioceramic sealer would just fill it and it'll be fine. So we looked at that, and I did a micro CT study, and it was a very thorough, detailed study looking at 320 sections within the canal. So that was a lot of micro CT data. Each tooth took an hour, and we did 48 teeth with different sealers. And we found that actually the most of the sealers behave in the same way, but what was the difference is the application technique. So the sealers that came in with an applicator, that's with an elongated tip, etc., were definitely a lot more uniform compared if you have sealers that you mix on a pad and you dip your GP in and put it in. And they had the most inconsistent results, whereas the others obviously had more consistent results. But the caveat was to that if you have an oval canal or a wide canal, which makes sense, regardless of how you apply it, you will end up with voids at the apical and the coronal thirds. So it's not advocated for that. So that was for me really interesting. Obviously, it only confirms what I would have thought anyway, but it's good to have it there, evidence base, and educate people about it. But then the next question that I have at the moment is, okay, retrievability. Yes, let's hope that root canal that's done by Antonio or myself, let's hope that we don't need to retreat it. You know, we've disinfected, we've sealed everything, we have the best bonding technique, etc. But ultimately, we will have to retreat some root canal treatments, especially with the single file system. You know, with the single cone. People, are they irrigating enough? Are they really? Yes, it looks pretty on the X-ray, but is it fully disinfected? And if they're using a bioceramic sealer, tough job for us to try to dig all of that out. So there's yes mechanical techniques, etc. But I'm keen to explore more novel techniques into maybe coming up with a solution that would help remove that sealer effectively, but without damaging the tooth, etc. So it's a bit
yeah.
of a difficult question. But I have my part B of the British Endo Society research uh, grant, which just literally starting soon, is to look at options for that. And this is when my colleagues in dental materials, biomedical engineering, all of that, I will go to them, chemistry, to sort of go that way rather than talk to dentists about it, because I need to explore what's possible to dissolve that sealer without damaging the tooth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I imagine that it's difficult to dissolve the sealer without
I know.
dissolving
The tooth.
the
I agree.
tooth, but it will be interesting, and I look forward to seeing a couple of years, and I will remember this
Hopefully.
episode.
I might I
Yeah,
might come and say, it's not possible. We're just gonna have to
yeah,
follow the right protocol and disinfect the tooth to avoid retreatment, but we will
yeah.
explore that. But you're right, it would be very difficult.
I like the argument that you never do the treatments thinking about the retreatment. Like when you do a crown, you are not thinking, oh, okay, uh, how I will remove this crown in a couple of years if I need it. No, you put the
Yeah,
crown the best you can. Or when you
absolutely.
place the implant, you never think like, okay, when we will remove this implant, where next we are going to
No,
put another one.
no.
Um,
Yeah.
but I understand, and maybe and in endodontics we are always thinking about the next
Yes.
treatment if it fails.
Fails. Absolutely.
Maybe we are more pessimists than the other specialties.
Yes,
Maybe,
but it's
uh,
it's pessimistic, but it's humbling, because, but ultimately, as you said, like, it's sometimes disheartening that you do such a beautiful endo, and that tooth may require cuspal coverage, and that tooth didn't receive it, and then the patient comes back with a vertical root fracture, and you're like,
yeah.
can't do anything about it now. So it's you are reliant on what happens next, but if you can be part of that, at least in the initial phase, hopefully you don't see the failures as frequently.
And as a dentist that performs endodontics and also restorative dentistry, being restorative dentistry your specialty
Yeah,
uh, or your strong size, are you a taper when you choose the file? You are thinking about what the conflict between having a big taper and having a preparation that is very big, and you see no, but you know that you are touching the walls, and
yeah,
you have space for the irrigant and
yeah,
for the sealer and for the gutta percha,
yeah,
but you are weakening the tooth. So how do you manage this
yeah. This
interior
balance.
conflict? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So for me, like, I do want to see the arrogance going where it's meant to be going, but I am moving away from large tape, especially coronally. Especially if you have the right, irrigation system, if you have the right sort of control of your irrigants and activation or whatever, if you were to use that, it's not necessary. I feel I am moving away from that, especially in the coronally. And then I know that there's certain newer file systems that actually, has no cutting threads at all, like in the coronal section, and I see the benefit of that. I think I've been more kind of moving more towards that, leaning towards that. But as long as I have the other techniques that supplement me to get that irrigant where it needs to be. So
yeah.
that's where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's difficult. Nowadays, you see excellent clinicians using laser, for instance,
Yeah.
and they achieve
Mm,
to have like
mm,
very thin preparations.
mm,
I'm not ready to go to
no,
that in that
no. Or
direction,
like
but
the
they are
the
using a
threats
lot.
and yeah,
They are using a lot the bioceramic sealer because you cannot you'll have to do single cone. You cannot do
yeah,
Schindler technique with a
exactly.
1503
No,
preparation,
yeah,
and I think it will be interesting to understand. Also, you see the development of new obturation techniques.
yeah,
I see some things about like negative pressure obturation.
yeah,
Maybe it will be the future.
mm,
Let's see if we
yeah. If we
will achieve
change,
the dream
mm,
of having the Hess anatomy
yeah,
filled with our sealer that
yeah, completely,
we
yeah,
cannot see. Yeah, we
yeah.
cannot see in our days.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think we're in sync with that.
Yeah, let's see in the future. It was great to talk with you, Asma. It was a really nice talk. It was the time flown because we
No,
have a
I can't
lot of things
believe
to
it.
discuss.
Yes.
We could do another episode with a lot of things that we barely touch
Yes.
here
Yeah.
in this conversation. It was great, and thank you for your time, because as you are a very busy person, it was great to reserve this time in your agenda
Yeah.
to have this talk.
Yeah.
And I hope you liked this conversation. I don't know if you have any final thoughts, or maybe you are not a very social media
Yeah,
person.
yeah. And that's the thing. So that's something for me I'm learning. So firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's been extremely enjoyable. And as you said, like looking at the time, I couldn't believe it. Like we can talk for hours on this. It doesn't feel like an effort at all. And it's really a pleasure. Social media, yes, I'm not, but I'm again embracing it. As I said, I don't want to be that dinosaur, although I don't look it, that I'm that old or whatever. But it's sort of, you have to embrace it, engage with it. And this is, again, part of acknowledging that our world changes and it's changing at a much faster rate. So you have to be part of that. I might have said getting out of your comfort zone so many times. It could be the title of today's episode. But this is for me, getting out of my comfort zone. Because my first ever podcast, I didn't know what to expect. I don't know how it's going to turn out to be. But just be yourself. Explore different opportunities and avenues that are out there, and just kind of don't limit yourself to what you have just because it feels right and it's easy and it's comfortable. You will become a much happier person and a much better clinician if you explore other avenues. And this is for both of us as an example of that. We're both clinicians, we're both extremely busy, but we're doing this, and that's a clear example how this could help you in your career.
Yeah, and it's great for me. It's being a pleasure to talk with colleagues that I some colleagues I knew already, some others I didn't know them, and for me, it's a great pleasure to explore the world
Yeah,
through dentistry, because the
absolutely.
struggle is the same when you treat a tooth. It's the same in Japan or in Russia or in Africa or in America,
Absolutely. Yes.
and we have a common language
100%.
of being dentists,
Yeah.
and we can understand a little bit other cultures and other ways of thinking, and for me it's a pleasure to talk with dentists all over the world. So this is the end of the first
Thank you.
season
Yeah.
of the podcast. I would like to thank Coltin for the support. It was great to have the support of Coltin and the help from the company to do this this podcast series. It was great for me. I learned a lot with each participant, and in this final episode, it was very good to talk with you, and I will like to thank you very much. And I hope to see you in the future, maybe to talk about different approaches, and the solvent of bioceramic sealer
Pressure is
will
on now.
be. Yeah, will be now I will do endodontics more relaxed, because I know that you are going to develop a solvent, so I can feel the teeth, the root canal with the bioceramic sealer in the present moment, because maybe it will fail in 2 years, and that's give you time to develop the new product. So
So
when
I'll
you have a
try my
sample,
best.
you can send it.
No, thank you so much for having me as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, it'd be great to catch up again. It might be in person, you never know, at a British Endo Society or ESE, maybe. Would
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
worked out. Yes, absolutely.
Or the Portuguese Endodontic
Oh,
Society.
absolutely. Yeah,
You should
100%.
visit in
Yeah,
September.
yeah.
We'll have our
Check it
congress.
out. Yeah,
Yeah, in part is a good excuse to visit Portugal.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Asma.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.